I love Jamaica. I love Jamaica. Jamaica represents a lot to me because it is the land of Marcus Garvey. In fact, Garvey to me is the only main leader that I really had a lot of respect for. I respect and love for all of them. But Garvey came with something pragmatic. Going home, building things. We are now bogged with philosophy. So Jamaica represents the home of black nationalism. Not saying that in a negative way, but it is waking us up that we have to depend on ourselves. The brothers and sisters in New York are just as beautiful as the brothers and sisters in Jamaica. The brothers and sisters in England, likewise, we all are beautiful.
Marcus Mosiah Garvey, Mosiah Garvey, great one. Marcus Mosiah Garvey, we love that. Marcus, Mosiah Garvey.
Welcome to Black History Month. Now, for the first time ever, we're going to gain a special insight into the philosophy and opinions of one of the greatest men to have ever walked this earth. We're going to be celebrating a remarkable life and legacy over the next 31 days as I bring you the resurrection of Marcus Mosiah Garvey, a series which will be presented by myself, Jermaine Brown, featuring 31 brothers from our community, all chosen to resurrect speeches from Marcus Garvey daily. So now, before we get into today's speech, I must give you some handy information. Food for thought. Marcus Garvey was the founder and organizer of the largest independent black movement in the world, the Universal Negro Improvement Association and the African Communities League. And at the heights of success, the organization had a worldwide membership of over 11 million subscribed members. Now, this was an excellent feat, especially when we consider that this happened during a time of no internet, no smartphones, and no social media. And to top it all off, here's the icing on the cake. It was in the midst of 2 world wars. Now, I can't even get a following like that on Instagram and Snapchat, you know, and that's supposed to be easy. Easy, yeah? But he dared to travel the world, even to non-English speaking regions, spreading his message of unity, self-love, and empowerment. This was during a time when it was particularly dangerous for black men and women to even wander outside of their own homes. But these factors did not stop the man and his movement, for he had at his disposal an unmatched confidence. He didn't fear failure. He didn't care about the laughter and the ridicule hurled at him, for he had a fearless passion for the advancement of black people worldwide that fueled his mission. Now, I'm intrigued to know more about the mind of this man and how he accomplished so much. What can I take from him that I can apply to my life today? This is program 17 of our series. Today's speech was written while Marcus Garvey was incarcerated in the Atlanta Federal Penitentiary Jail in 1925, and 2 years before his deportation from America to Jamaica. It is a very reflective and thought-provoking article. As one Haitian writer puts it, Myrafa Desulum says Garvey suffered a crucifixion as a man in his struggles. Garvey, she says, was defiant like Haiti and threatened the very foundation of the Western world. Haiti, like Garvey, was founded upon the philosophy and principles of cultural, social, political, and economic independence from the West. Both Haiti and Garvey are examples of 2 yielding torches of black freedom which cannot be extinguished. For as Garvey said, men who are in earnest are not afraid of consequences. Today's reading is titled, A Race That Steals From and Double-Crosses Itself in the Making. How some Negroes get rich at the expense of their race. Today's narration is by Dougie from Birmingham, UK.
You are listening to an Honor Level production featuring the Resurrection of Marcus Mosiah Garvey series.
To steal, exploit, trick or double cross is no special trait of the Negro. It is common to all peoples within our civilization. But the Negro, being a race in the making, is the only race that performs or practices the evils without method intended not to wholesalely harm itself. The Jew steals from the Jew, but not to the extent of doing wholesale harm to the rest of the Jewish community. The white man steals from his brother, but not with the intent or to the extent of harming or destroying his race as a community, group, or as a whole. The Negro, on the contrary, steals from his own without the slightest thought of consequences or any regard to what extent the entire race is affected. It is through such disposition and reckless practice that the bigger and idealistic part of my world program in the interest of the race has been damaged by the unscrupulous who have affiliated themselves with the organization. My references to dishonesty among Negroes is confined to themselves as a race. They seldom extend that dishonesty in their dealings with other races. In fact, there is no race as honest in its dealings with the white race as the Negro. Dishonesty within the race must not be interpreted to mean only among the Universal Negro Improvement Association, but includes, in a larger degree, our churches, clubs, lodges, fraternities, and all other organizations, not to mention our corrupt political groups. Why there has been so much ado about the Universal Negro Improvement Association is that we have always tried to expose, drive out, and disgrace the culprits as we discover them in our organization, in that we are engaged in the work of reform. That is why, in criticizing us in one of his brutal articles, Dr. Dubois of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People charged that I cannot get along with my associates, in that my entourage have always changed. The policy of the Universal Negro Improvement Association under my direction has always been that of honesty and a square deal. My friend today became my enemy tomorrow on the discovery of any act of dishonesty. There was no confidence game with me in the association, and this accounts largely for the disloyalty that has operated against me. In other movements, the entourage are held together and never change because of the confidence game. I refuse to hold office under such conditions. We of the Universal Negro Improvement Association expose, dismiss, and get rid of all our dishonest associates as we come across them. Hence, there is always a fight, either of revenge or to break up, as is so customary to human nature. If I had compromised or conspired with the men to cheat the organization or the people, then my entourage would have always remained, and no one would have possibly heard a hard word said against me from within the race, while the poor masses would have paid. I was brought up under a system of private and public life where we knew nothing of graft and the confidence trick. Until I started my activities in the interest of my people in America, I never heard the question, how much is in it for me? I thank God that I have not fallen for the system and made my hands wither away and my tongue be silenced before I allow myself to be brought under the influence of such a system. I would rather stand alone and be framed for the prison 1,000 times than deny the black religion of my mother. Mark you, not the white religion. The religion that taught me to be honest and fair to all my fellow men. In our churches and all other organizations, our entourage always remains the same because there is always an understanding. Only when a trustee, deacon, or pastor attempts to do what is right by the congregation or people is there a cry for him to go, and a split when he is kicked out of office by the strong confidence group. Other organizations, to preserve the ruling group and prevent them from being put out of office, maneuver to appoint and elect from among themselves to the exclusion of a popular election among the people. If I had clubbed with other Negroes to exploit or fleece the people, these Confederate Negroes would have protected me by political power and influence, because in protecting me, they would have been protecting themselves. Although I have had dozens of close associates in the administration of the affairs of the association, I have not had one friend. In that, friendship in public life seems to imply that you must steal or concoct to be a good fellow and allow the other fella to do the same and protect him, in doing so in return for a similar exchange. Let such friendship be damned, and let me die instead 1,000 times. It is not a part of my religion. If I have friends, they must be honest and clean, and not expect me to do them favors on dishonesty or by betraying others. Because I did not fall a prey to the methods of graft, I was regarded as a bad fellow with the cry around me of "Garvey must go," and left to suffer from a general frame-up that shall have its place in Negro history. On the average, the Negro loses more than 50% annually in real estate holdings, investments, stocks, bonds, part-time payments on furniture, etc., than any other race group in the United States, as well as elsewhere. A general confidence game is carried on in this direction by real estate brokers, crooked lawyers, and certain Negro leaders and agents. In this, unscrupulous white men and their Negro associates indulge. For instance, a Negro preacher would start a new church congregation, gathering together as many religious suckers as possible to worship in a sufficiently accommodating building, or he would be called to the pastorate of an already established church. After being there for a comparatively short time, and without his congregation increasing to any appreciable extent, he would be approached by some Negro real estate broker or agent of some white broker. He would be told of how wonderful a man he is, and talked into building or buying a new church more becoming to him as a leader of the community. Already, the brokers found out that the present congregation holds the major or all the equity in the present church property. By the appeal to the preacher's vanity, he is induced to take up the proposition of the new building, although nothing in the world is wrong with the building now occupied. The question of how much is in it for me comes up, and being the very question the broker subconsciously suggested, he readily offers the preacher a substantial bonus or commission on the deal. He falls for the big offer, and immediately he starts out by the preaching of a powerful sermon, backed up by some passages from the Bible, to show why there should be a new house of worship. In cases where the pastor is too honest or upright to fall for the bait, a deacon or a trustee who has a pull with the congregation is influenced to put it over. In such an event, things are made warm for the pastor, and he is forced to resign or put out by a trick. To build a new church or purchase the other, big drives and rallies are instituted among the people to raise the amount of money needed for the first payment, out of which bonuses, commissions, etc. are paid. Women and young girls are generally used in these rallies to collect the money from Negro men and white families. When the deal is put through, you will find that all the equity the people had in their original building and the monies raised in the rallies are gobbled up in the first payment on the new property, and a first and sometimes a second mortgage are taken out on the new property that taxed to limit its full value, thereby wiping out all equity for the people, as the plan is to charge as much for the new building as will dispose of the equity of the first payment, leaving the property taxed at its full value by the mortgagees. Then the said people are called upon year after year to rally, to pay the interest and reduce the payments on the mortgages, and when sufficient of the mortgages is reduced or the property paid for, a new scheme is hatched that practically repeats the old performances. In some cases, such as in the purchase of fraternal buildings, and some churches too, another scheme is used by the real estate broker and his confederates. In such cases, bonds are sold to the members or people, and it has been a terrible fight for me to keep sundry branches of the Universal Negro Improvement Association from falling into the traps of these sharks, a combination of whom, allied with politicians, are trying to crucify me as being in the way. The following legal opinion on one of their methods is recited for general enlightenment. You submitted to me a proposed contract between the UNIA and the John Doe Company. After reading carefully the said proposed contract, my opinion is not to sign it for the following reasons. The UNIA will bind itself under the proposed agreement with no assurances that the John Doe Company will carry out the intention. That is, to put up the building in the proposed contract. If this proposed contract would be signed by the UNIA, they would be obliged to give a deed in trust for $4,000, which money would go to the John Doe Company. You would further be obliged to pay all the bills that the John Doe Company may incur. That is, for printing, legal fees, architect fees, engraving, trustees' fees, etc. which may amount to a considerable amount of money. And under this proposed contract, you are obliged to pay this first before anything else is done. The John Doe Company will also be entitled to 15% of all the bonds sold, as well as 10% for the supervision of the building, and also another 2% on the total bond issue. If you study carefully this proposed contract, it is my opinion that the expense will run above 40% that will go to the John Doe Company. There is also another provision in the proposed contract that the UNIA is to assist them in disposing of the said bond certificates. My conclusion is that the John Doe Company is not to invest a 5-cent piece in this enterprise, but at all times they will derive benefits by reason of the clause that they are to get their fees first. They intend to create a campaign to sell the bond certificates among the colored people, and they will insist upon you to give them all the assistance you can. And if the colored people will not take up sufficient certificates to go through the enterprise, they will drop it under the pretense that if the colored people are not buying the bond certificates, why should the white people do so? The net result will be that of whatever certificates will be sold, they will get all the money to cover their expenses, and you will lose the property. I also wish to add that this proposed contract does not state just exactly the nature of the building, what income may be derived by way of rents, etc., and also actual cost of putting up such building. Those are necessary elements before a contract is signed. In the purchase of private houses, the real estate brokers and agents are even more merciless in their exploitation of the race. By finding out the individuals in the community who might have $1,000 or two saved, the brokers directly or through their agents would influence such persons to invest in a home, either by purchasing wastelands in some adjoining state or out of the way places, or a house in their immediate neighborhood. They influence the purchasers to pay up nearly all the money they have in hand, and 6 months, a year or two after, they conspire to foreclose on the property, or by well-devised tricks get the purchasers so disgusted that they themselves give up the properties that generally fall back into the hands of the brokers or their clique. The race is similarly robbed in the part-time payment on expensive furniture they are induced to buy through confidence men. A careful study of the situation from 1914 to the present time would reveal an alarming state of affairs. I have only stated these facts to open the eyes of the people and to show you from what source my enemies within the race come. These tricks are common, and no organization, church or community is free from them. I make no exception of the great Universal Negro Improvement Association. To work reform in such an atmosphere challenges the divinity of a Christ and not the frail and weak patience of a martyr. I have made my little sacrifice in creating the sentiment for reform. Let others now take up the work and carry on while I remain confined. Since writing the above, information has been telegraphed me by my secretary that a group of men within the organization in New York City has mortgaged the Liberty Hall there for the sum of $32,000 and used the money to pay their friends, ex-officials of the association, whom they allowed to secure judgments against the New York Association during my imprisonment without making any defense in the courts. This Liberty Hall is the most valuable of the many single bits of property owned by the association the world over. I was able to purchase same at great labor and sacrifice, and now, after 9 months of imprisonment, the people have lost nearly all their equity in the property by deception. I have also learned that other property that I also worked hard to acquire for the people has been mortgaged or encumbered to the loss of the members. The aptitude of the Negro to disobey orders coming from himself. The Negro in Western civilization, because of his environments that force upon him a complex inferiority, is the most stubborn individual to discipline within the race. He has but little, if any, respect for internal racial authority. He cannot be depended upon to carry out an order given by a superior of his own race. If the superior attempts in his presence to enforce the order, he is undermined and accused of putting on airs. If the order is entrusted to a lieutenant, he, in turn, changes the order to suit himself and endeavors to constitute himself the superior individual. In my experience, as head of the largest serious Negro organization in the world, I have found that to every 100 orders given to be executed for the absolute good of the organization and the race, not 2% of them have been carried out in their entirety. This lack of obedience to orders and discipline checkmates the real worthwhile progress of the race. This accounts for the Negro's lack of racial nationalistic ideal. The only cure for him is his removal to an atmosphere entirely his own, where he will be forced under rigid civil and other discipline to respect himself and his own racial authority.
An honor-level production.
Judge, I'm innocent. Judge, I'm innocent. Judge, I'm innocent. Judge, I'm innocent.
Pull it up, selector. Pull it up, selector.
Thank you.
I Lego this one, yeah.
What is justice? What is justice? What is justice? Can justice be the hope for realistic fairness? Is the concept of fairness a myth and a present reality? Or does justice exist in another galaxy? Can one really expect in this current reality that justice will supposedly exist in a kind and non-harmful manner?
We have just been listening to a race that steals from and double crosses itself in the making. How some Negroes get rich at the expense of their race. Originally delivered in 1925. This concludes day 17, and we would like to thank Dougie for today's narration. Dougie, an artist and mentor, has been familiar with the great works of Marcus Garvey for many years, and he says that it was an honor being asked to be a part of the Resurrection of Marcus Garvey project, because he believes that he is not even worthy of tying the shoelaces of the great man. He says, throughout the years, I have grown to understand that Marcus Garvey was deeper than we tend to even think, and often misunderstood. His words have so much relevance and resonance despite being uttered such a long time ago. Okay, so we welcome your comments, opinions, and feedback on your experience with the Resurrection of Marcus Mosiah Garvey series so far. Should you wish to share with us by email, you can do so by contacting us at onalevel@hotmail.co.uk. That's on-a-level@hotmail.co.uk. As you know, in this series, we are paying homage to Marcus Mosiah Garvey, as Black History Month is all about celebration. So join me to give a few shout outs, starting with Garvey's parents, Mama Sarah Jane Richards and Pops Marcus Garvey Sr. We also want to pay homage to those esteemed ancestors who paved the way for Marcus to appear on the world stage. We also pay homage to the graduates of the School of African Philosophy and all of the founding members and supporters of the UNIA. Last but not least, we pay special homage and tribute to his esteemed wife, Amy Jakes Garvey, who was a formidable leader in her own right. Mrs. Garvey kept her husband's legacy alive, and it is partly because of her loving efforts that we can share this groundbreaking series with you today. Tune in tomorrow at the same time for the Resurrection of Marcus Mosiah Garvey, with me, Jermaine Brown. I'm going to leave you with the famous anthem that Marcus Garvey and the UNIA members had wanted to be adopted as the universal anthem for Black people across the globe. Let's take a moment to listen and feel free to wave your red, black and green flag should you have one.
Up, you mighty race! You can accomplish what you will.
Ethiopia, thou land of our fathers, thou land where the gods love to be. A storm cloud at night suddenly gathers, all armies come rushing to thee. We must in the fight be victorious, when swords are thrust outward to gleam. For us will the victory be glorious, when led by the red, black and green. Advance, advance to victory, let Africa be free. Advance to meet the foe, advance to meet the foe, with the might of the red, the black and the green, with the might of the red, the black and the green. O Jehovah, thou God of the ages, grant unto our sons that need the wisdom thou gave to thy sages when Israel was sore in need. Thy voice to the dim past has spoken, Ethiopia shall stretch forth her hand. By thee shall all fetters be broken, and heaven bless our dear motherland. Advance, advance to victory, let us